reporting to all members of our committee that you have been so generous with your time and that you've attended in such large numbers all week. And it's because of that kind of attendance that we can continue to bring people to this campus to engage in thought and ideas with you. I do believe that the Popcorn Forum and the convocations both are a great assistance to a very revolutionary thing, and that is thinking as a human being. As we close out this week, I would like to remind you that following what I believe will be a very, very exciting presentation, we will have a panel this afternoon at 1 o'clock in the Bonner Room of the Student Union Building. And our guest this morning will be there to answer questions with other panel members this afternoon from 1 to 2:30. And with that, we shall conclude the week. As we close the last day, I really want to thank those organizations and individuals that without their assistance, this would not have happened. And first of all, I would like to thank the Associated Student Government of North Idaho College for 22 years of funding this symposium, and we want to say thank you very much. I also want to thank each individual student who has come this week, as in the past years, and I also want to thank a very special faculty at North Idaho College. I'm very close to my colleagues, and I know with their commitment and dedication and encouraging you to come, and at times even assignments, makes this very helpful. And the administration, all of the staff, the Board of Trustees, and all those in the community. I also this morning would like to remind you that if you are excited, which I suspect you will be with this presentation, our guest books are located at the bookseller on Sherman Avenue if you'd like to purchase one of those. With that, I do not want to take any more time from a very distinguished individual. I welcome to our campus James Randi, who is really a famous debunker of faith healers, channelers, and assorted psychics. I would like to quote from Time magazine, which I think describes very clearly really who he is and what he is about. And I'm quoting, "It was for his expos of faith healers, channelers, spoon benders, assorted psychics, and others who prey on the gullible that Randi in 1986 became the first magician to receive a prestigious Genius Award from the MacArthur Foundation in Chicago, Illinois. The $272,000 that came with the honor enabled Randi to step up his travels throughout the world. He logged 45,000 miles traveling far from his home in Plantation, Florida. He traveled to Australia demonstrating the fraudulence of channeling, which involves a supposedly long-dead sage uttering words of wisdom through the mouth of a modern-day proxy. He moved on to China, invited by a science journal to help stem what the editor called a growing confusion between science and suspicion. In San Francisco and Des Moines, Dallas, and New York City, Randi has spoken out for rationality in what he sees as an increasing irrational world. He has said the following: "It's like shoveling water uphill, but it's got to be done." A very famous person by the name of Carl Sagan said of our speaker, "We may disagree with Randi on specific points, but we ignore him at our peril." Let's give an Idaho welcome to James Randi.
It was heartwarming. At my last appearance before the American Association for the Advancement of Science, however, I was introduced in turn by Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov. That was a sterling introduction, and I hoped that I was able in some way to live up to the introduction. I'll try to do that with your introduction today. Ladies and gentlemen, I am in the most peculiar of businesses. I'm in the business of telling people things that they should already know. Things that are just perfectly good common sense. I'm telling them that Elvis is still dead, the sky is not falling, and 4 plus 4 still equals 8. Whether you add oranges and Volkswagens, or if you're adding other objects or entities, 4 plus 4 still equals 8. I see some head shaking in the audience. What an attitude. Well, I'm willing to be shown. I'm always willing to be shown. But you see, as Tony has told you, I am primarily a magician by trade. That is to say, a conjurer. Conjurer, according to dictionary definition, is somewhat different from a magician. Though in America, the word magician is used to cover people like David Copperfield. David is an actor playing the part of a magician. A magician, by dictionary definition, is one who does magic. That figures. What is magic then? Magic, according to the dictionary, is an attempt to control nature by means of spells and incantations. Ladies and gentlemen, I assure you, I have tried spells and incantations. No good. You have to use skullduggery, deceit, lying, and cheating in order to make the girl float in the air, or to float in the air yourself, as Mr. Copperfield so beautifully did the other night. Some of you may have seen that program. Or to saw the lady in 8 pieces, or whatever. You have to use trickery. You can spell and incant all you want until your throat is dry. It ain't gonna work. Now, a conjurer is a person who approximates the effect of genuine magic by means of trickery. And that is what I am, and it's what Mr. Copperfield freely admits that he is, an actor playing the part of a magician, or someone who uses subterfuge, illusion, psychological trickery, whatever, in order to accomplish his purpose, which is entertainment. Now, if I remember correctly, it was only a few years ago that Hal Holbrook, the famous actor, gave up doing his evening with Mark Twain. I must say I was privileged to see it live twice in 2 different parts of the United States, and I have it on videotape at home as well. It was a PBS special at one time. An evening with Mark Twain consisted of Hal Holbrook appearing on the stage, alone and alive, dressed like Mark Twain, made up like Mark Twain, speaking like Mark Twain, and with Mark Twain's very words, moving and in every way giving his impression of what it would be like if you were sitting there in the audience watching Mark Twain on stage. It was an evening with Mark Twain, but he did not insult the intelligence of his audience by saying, "I am Mark Twain." Of course, that's obvious. He's Hal Holbrook playing the part. But ladies and gentlemen, there are people that appear before you all the time, and they don't tell you they're just playing a part. They say they are the real thing. They're channeling, they're doing astrology, chronology, any amount of nonsense can take place in front of you, and these people say they really do have these powers, but they're not just putting on an act as if they do have those powers. Now, as a magician, when I walk out on stage, I assume that my audience doesn't believe I'm really doing the miracles that I apparently do. This is not a magic show today. It's a lecture with any luck. But I will be doing a few things from time to time that will demonstrate just how easily you can be deceived, and indeed, I hope, what a pleasure it is to be deceived. It's sort of titillating. That's a nice word. Look it up. Just in case you're worried. Gotta be careful in Idaho, you know. This isn't California. Now, as a magician, I've learned one thing about human nature. I walk out in front of my audience, and I have to sort of look them over. And I look at individuals, and I sort of have to, by intuition gathered from many years of experience on a stage such as this, I have to look around and decide who are the people that are going to be cooperative with me, who are going to get their backs up and hate me from the very beginning. I've already spotted a couple of both kinds already in this audience. Who are going to be the people that I could invite to come up on stage and participate with me, and if I give them a little bit of a nudge and a wink, they'll go along with it because it's part of the act and it's sort of fun to be in on it. I have to be able to judge those things. But I've learned something else even more important about people in general, and certainly about myself. We all make assumptions. For example, if I had a cardboard box on this stage, and I were to take the cardboard box and tip it over and show it to you and say, "An empty cardboard box," you'd say, "Well, I don't know about that. It looks empty, but maybe not." But if I simply take the cardboard box and toss it onto the table, and it lands on the table, it sounds and looks and skids across the table like an empty cardboard box, in the back of your mind, you just automatically say, "Okay, you threw an empty cardboard box on the table," and you accept it because you came to that conclusion. I didn't try to tell you that it was empty. That's the kind of assumption you make automatically. You have to make assumptions or you can't function. In going through your daily life, you must make assumptions. Now, I see people sitting there saying, I wonder, I don't think I make many assumptions. Oh, yes, you do. Let me point out a few. You stand at the curb trying to cross the street. And you look up and you see traffic lights there. Red, amber, and green. As we know, The accepted rule is that red means stop, don't go. Green means go. And yellow, of course, means go like hell. Well, that's not the way they made up the rules, but we know that that's what it really means. So when you go to cross the street and you see a red light, if you have any common sense at all, you stop. When the light goes green, you step off the curb and you cross the street. Because you assume that this traffic light works the way traffic lights work all around the world. But that it will stop traffic coming in one direction and enable you to pass. That is, except in New York, there are exceptions to all these rules, of course. You assume that you will not be run flat by a truck coming by, going in the wrong direction at the wrong time with the wrong light. But you've also made another assumption. You assume that the road is not going to turn into strawberry jello as you step on it. Because your experience has told you it doesn't do that. So you automatically and quite correctly, I hope in most cases, though I don't know this particular town, that the road will not change into strawberry jello as you step onto it. Now you made an assumption when you came here today. Well, this is the real me, incidentally. And this beard is real. I wore the real one today because this is such a nice town. I often wear the fake one, but I leave the real one at home because I don't want it to get damaged, you see. But this is the real beard, and this really is me. But you made another assumption. A very simple assumption that will not cost you anything, but I think it might surprise you. You all made the assumption automatically without even thinking about it. A thought about it did not enter your mind at all. You assumed when I stepped up here that I was speaking into that microphone. And that microphone is quite dead. It doesn't work at all. The microphone is actually underneath my tie down here, you see. Hear me a little better because the tie has a way of filtering out high frequencies, and the engineer back there has been going out of his mind, wondering how I can be heard any better, and that isn't working too well either. I'll put it like this, and that should improve things enormously. Now, yes, got you again. The simple assumption that you made that I was using this microphone, of course, as I said, won't cost you anything. It doesn't show you to be incredibly naive or stupid or unsophisticated, uneducated. None of those things. It just shows that you're like everyone else. I would have made that assumption were I sitting in this audience, and I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But ladies and gentlemen, there are assumptions that you can make about the world around you that not only will cost you money, they'll cost you your emotional security in many cases, they may cost you your sanity, and they may even cost you your lives. Now that's a pretty statement to make, it's a pretty frightening statement, but nonetheless it is quite true. I've done 9 books to date. A 10th book will be coming out at the end of next year. My 9th book is not out until October this year. And those books have dealt with various subjects, all the way from my first one, which was The Truth About Uri Geller. He's the gentleman who used to go around bending spoons. You might recall him on television some years ago, and claiming that it was done by genuine psychic means. All I can tell you about that is that if he's doing it by genuine psychic means, he's doing it the hard way. And he may very well be. I wrote another book just a few years ago called The Faith Healers. That's one of the books that is available in the local bookstore on, is it Sawyer Street, anyway? Sure, I'm sorry, close enough for government work. I'd like to give you a chance to correct me so you know I'm not totally perfect. Sure. Now, in the bookstore, you'll see that book sitting there. It's called The Faith Healers. And you won't know by looking at it, unless you read it carefully, the agony that I had to go through to write that book. I had to spend 2.5 years, actually about 4.5 years, but 2.5 years in concentrated research, traveling literally all over the world, answering the claims of healing that had come about through various faith healers, curanderos in Mexico, and various other people in various other countries under different names, who said that by striking you on the forehead and invoking divine assistance, they could cure you of any disease, all the way from arthritis to AIDS. They actually claimed these things. In many cases, I was present when those who thought that they were healed of such things as spinal arthritis were being picked up in a state of shock from the pain that they had been undergoing after running down the aisle thinking they had been cured by the paramedics And in some cases, I accompanied them to the hospital to get their story. But the strange thing is, strange to you, certainly not strange to me, not one of those people who was not healed as a result of the activities of the faith healer, not one of them expressed any doubt about the healing. When they were not healed, the excuse they gave with a wan smile was, well, Reverend so-and-so did tell me that if I didn't really work hard to keep the healing, the devil would get me, and the devil got me. That's what I call a rationalization. But it's perfectly sensible to them. There is no amount of evidence that is going to convince people who are already convinced of the truth of their particular belief that it is not true, no matter how much evidence is presented. I won't name the lady, but she's well known on television. Some years ago, I appeared on her program, and she'd had a gentleman on the program who apparently had bent her key with the power of his mind. She described to me what the process was. She said, I held my key, this key that you see right here, in my hand, tightly like that. He never touched it. And when I opened it up a moment later, it was bent, like you see right now. It was bent like that. And he never touched it. And I said to her, calling her by her first name, actually he did. He had it for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. No, Randy, he didn't. How could you tell? You weren't there. Well, I was in the early days of videotaping. I had a half-inch reel-to-reel black and white videotape machine before VHS and other invented machines and such came out for the public. So I had been able to record that program. And I told her, I said, I have a recording of it, and I timed it. It's 2 minutes and 40 seconds, during which he holds the key himself. No, it didn't happen that way. We then went into the control room to see the videotape. She stood there and watched the entire episode. At one point, this psychic person, so-called, so claimed, picked up the key and said, how long have you had this key? Dropped his hands below the table with the key in it and listened as she said what the history of the key was. They then went away for a 2-minute commercial series. When they came back, this person took the key from under the table, asked her to put out her hand, quickly pressed it into her hand without showing it to her, and said, now concentrate. A moment later, she opened her hand, screamed, and the key had been dead. That's not the astonishing part of it. The astonishing part of it, this lady, who was paid a considerable amount of money, certainly was in those days, to appear on this program and to conduct a program like this, which was seen on a major network, looked at the TV screen and turned to her producer and me and said, I'm sorry, that's not the way it happened. After seeing the videotape made 10 days before of her own program. This indicates to you perhaps just the surface of this strange entity. This strange entity which exists in science and in the experience of the average person. It's called cognitive dissonance. It's well recognized. It simply means that no amount of evidence will convince one that already believes. Now, there have been people down through the years who have preached that they will never die. One of them was Father Divine in New York many years ago. He's sufficiently dead now that we don't have to worry about it. He said he would never die. Lots of other people said they would never die. Mary Baker Eddy, for example, the Christian Science Church. You cannot find in all of the annals of the Christian Science Church the year that she died, because they don't admit that she ever died. They have her birth date. That's all. No death date. They will not give you a death date. We know the death date. We know when the funeral was held. It was very quiet. She was put away under the ground very quietly, and they didn't make a big fuss about it. And they continued to ignore the fact that she actually had died, because she said she would never die. This is cognitive dissonance carried to an organization which is worldwide. And yet that's what they believe. Next week, I have an essay coming out in Time magazine. If you look down near the end of the magazine, I'll be on the very last page, you'll see that essay. And I'd like you to pick up a copy of Time, if you would, and read it. And you will see that it expresses my dismay with the fact that all over the world, in every civilized country of the world, we have exactly this procedure underway. Exactly the same procedure. It is frightening, but it is true. It's something that we have to face up to and we have to deal with from time to time. Now, the opinion is often with my audiences. He's going to stand up there, and he's going to debunk. In fact, Tony introduced me as a debunker, and I must correct you on that one point. Tony, I'm not a debunker. To be a debunker means that I would approach the subject saying, well, here's something else I don't believe in, I think it's not true, and I'm going to prove it's not true. That's a luxury I can't afford. I am an investigator. If it ends up being debunking, which it largely does if I'm able to get the evidence, sometimes I can't get close enough to examine it, but if I do get close enough to examine it, in every case it has turned out to be a debunking. But that's not the intention. And there's an important difference there, I think. If I were a debunker, it would mean that I make up my mind in advance that it isn't so. No, I'm an investigator and I'm willing to be shown. Now, there are certain things I will simply not look into. I could give you a long list, but let me just... Tooth fairy, there's one. Oh, you laugh? There are millions of people around the world that believe in the tooth fairy. They're very small, and they haven't done much thinking in their lives, perhaps, and maybe they haven't really had enough sophistication to recognize that the tooth fairy is not likely to be true, but the quarter is under the pillow. So all of the evidence they have says that the tooth fairy exists. What about Santa Claus? Well, I can't prove Santa Claus doesn't exist either. See, I can't prove a negative. Now think about that for a bit. I literally cannot prove a negative. That is, in a claim that somebody is making, I can't prove a negative. Somebody stands up in the audience and says, I can't play the violin. I say, okay, what do you want me to do about it? Well, I want you to prove the contrary, that I can play the violin. I can't do that. Well, if I catch them playing the violin, ha-ha, then I can show they can play the violin, at least on that occasion, at that particular moment. But I can't prove a negative. I'm going to give you an example. This is a little intellectual exercise that you may enjoy entering into with me. Let's take a simple claim. We said Santa Claus a moment ago. Let's take a specific, all right, let's, flying reindeer. There's a good one. Hey, this is supposed to be the jolly elf comes down here. You could go around measuring chimneys. That's one way to do it. Go around measuring chimneys and find out whether fat men in red suits can get down them on December the 24th. My chimney is about like this. You'd have to really have somebody jumping on the top there and have greased hips or something to get down there. So that may not be a good way because maybe it's a little difficult. But suppose we could investigate flying reindeer. Now that's something we can do. But then I'm going to show you that even after we've done the test, we haven't proven a negative. Based upon my meager knowledge of the anatomy of the reindeer and aerodynamics, very meager knowledge of both of them, but based upon that amount of knowledge, I would say probably that a reindeer can't fly. Just look at it from a common sense point of view. But let's do an experiment. We're going to design the experiment now. Let me see. To get a good database, let's take about 1,000 reindeer. Now we can get into all the intricacies of how we choose these reindeer, where we get them from, but just say 1,000 reindeer. We take them up on top of the World Trade Center in New York. That'd be a good place. Now please don't laugh, this is science. And we label them. We put big numbers on the side, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 1,000. And we have a fellow there with a video camera and a big pad of paper and a big pen. He writes down 1. Puts down the time is, let me see, 11:25, okay. Ready to start the experiment? Right, okay. You've written down the date, and the time, the temperature, the humidity, the whole thing, right? Okay. Number 1. Easy now. Write down for number 1, no. Number 2. Here we go. Push. Number 2, same result. No. Now, folks, again, I don't know what the result of the experiment is going to be. And please, I'm not really. The kids down here are going, ooh, like this. I don't really want to perform this experiment. It's all an exercise of the mind, you see. So the ASPCA doesn't come after me and start to cudgel me with sharp instruments. No, I don't know what the result is going to be, but I can tell you, again, based upon my meager knowledge of the situation, I believe that we are going to get a pile of very unhappy and broken reindeer at the foot of the World Trade Center. And, no doubt, a number of policemen looking up and saying, I don't know, but here comes another one. But think about it now. At the end of this horrendous experiment, what have we proven, if anything? We have not proven that reindeer cannot fly. The best we can say about our experiment is that we have shown that these 1,000 reindeer, on this particular day, under these particular conditions of pressure, temperature, wind, motion, etc., either could not fly or chose not to. Now, if the latter, then we certainly do know something about the IQ of the average reindeer. But we have not shown that there are not 8 tiny reindeer at the North Pole with the funny names, all the way down to Rudolph, who cannot fly or who do not fly on the evening of December the 24th. You can't prove a negative. All I'm saying to the people who are making these claims is, show me your evidence. I will consider it, I will investigate it if it can be investigated, and I will make up my mind after that point as to whether or not it is likely to be true. Take the UFOs. Lots and lots of evidence. Lots of it. But it's very much like preparing for a birthday party. If you want to decorate the room, the kids all like balloons. So you go down to the balloon shop. You say, I'd like to buy 100 balloons to decorate the room and the garden for my kid's birthday party. The man says, well, we got 2 prices. These are 2 cents a piece, and these are 25 cents a piece. So what's the difference? They look exactly the same to me. Well, the 2 cent ones have all got little holes in them. The 25 cent ones, you blow them up, they'll stay blowing up for days and days and sometimes weeks. Why would I want the 2 cent ones? Well, they're much cheaper. But they're no good. You blow them up, all the air goes up. That's exactly what evidence is like. A lot of bad evidence isn't worth 1 or 2 good pieces of evidence. A lot of bad evidence isn't worth anything. It's simply a lot of bad evidence. Now, the UF folks will tell you that, as I believe someone did the other day on the same stage, that there's a mysterious radio broadcast that took place in England. At Caxton Hall in England, a matter of about a year and a half ago, I heard a similar lecture. They said there was a mysterious broadcast took place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, across the ocean in the other direction. And it went on to about 2 o'clock in the morning, and unfortunately the tape recording has been lost. What a pity. Well, ladies and gentlemen, every radio station, I know in England and the UK, and I know certainly in the United States and Canada, every radio station is required by federal law to keep a 24-hour record of everything that goes out over the air. I used to work for WOR Radio in New York, and I know that even when we were off the air on weekends after midnight, they actually ran a tape which recorded the silence that was on the air, the static, on that particular frequency. They were required to do that by federal law. So if anyone has any argument about what took place or didn't take place on the air, you go back to that official taping and you listen to it, and there it is. Millions of people are supposed to have heard the wonderful broadcast in England, or in Philadelphia, depending on which side of the ocean you're on. But these millions of people heard it. Did anyone make a recording of it? Didn't the radio station itself make a recording of it? Or has that recording mysteriously been lost? Every single piece of evidence for the UFOs, scraps of it, little pieces of mysterious metal, of unknown origin and unknown composition that has baffled scientists, I sound like the headlines in the National Enquirer now, seems to have been lost. What a pity. Or as they say in French, quel fromage. Nobody speaks French, I guess. Well, if I don't get a laugh on that, I know I'm in big trouble. Well, the fact that all of this good evidence has been lost is a great pity, because we've got good evidence on everything else. Everything else that has ever happened in our lives pretty well. Certainly in this modern day and age, for the last 50 years or so, we have pretty good records of it. There's hardly any doubt of it whatsoever, because the evidence is there and can be examined. But on these world-shaking things, such things as the UFOs finally coming to Earth and sending a message over the radio, lost the tape. It's around here someplace. I had it a moment ago, but we don't seem to have it right now. It may have taken place. I don't see any evidence that it did. Until I see evidence for an unusual claim, I'm not about to believe it. Why? Well, let's look at it this way. Unusual claims require unusually good proof. I'll give you an example. I live in Plantation, Florida, if you call that living. The average age of my neighbors is deceased. So I'm sort of a youngster down there. It doesn't matter, I can't tell you. I could tell you right here on this stage, I have a billy goat. my backyard. I can tell you that, and it's not terribly unlikely. People keep horses and sheep and such down there. They do that, sort of a rural area. And if I wanted to, I could have a billy goat. Well, how are you going to establish whether or not that's true? You could take somebody here that knows about billy goats. Now, billy goats have got horns. They smell like billy goats. They eat almost everything. And they've got rectangular irises. Ever seen that? That's a wonderful thing to see if you've never seen a billy goat. You can send somebody from here down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, get in a taxi, go to Mr. Randi's house, look over the fence, smells like a goat, looks like a goat, sounds like a goat, go back with a report saying, according to my evidence, I'm an expert on billy goats, he has a billy goat in his backyard. That's an ordinary claim, requires just an ordinary amount of proof. But now I'm going to change my claim. I got a unicorn in my backyard. But if you know anything about unicorns, getting a unicorn expert these days is exceedingly difficult. I could send somebody down there, a whole raft of people. They can look over the fence, and they can see something that looks like a small pony with a little goatee, horn coming out of its forehead, and say, well, looks like a unicorn to me. But I want more than that, folks. They should insist on taking a sample of that horn, a little bit of the hair, maybe a blood sample, x-ray of the skull. I would want an awful lot of very good evidence in order for them to come back and say, yes, he really does have a unicorn in his backyard. Why? Because it's an unusual claim and it's not likely to be true. Now, there are lots of things that aren't likely to be true that nonetheless are. But in order to establish them, we need unusually good evidence. A man says he can fly by flapping his arms. He can win from me $10,000. I've got a long-standing offer, temporarily suspended at this moment. I'm undergoing litigation of a very serious nature, and I've had to literally withdraw this order temporarily from the bank. Don't keep that money in escrow. Put it right into the regular account. It will go in as soon as the legal cases are finished, and I'm not going to get into all the details on that. But I must say that up until recently, I have had an offer for 24 years of $10,000 payable to any person or persons who can provide evidence of any paranormal, occult, or supernatural event of any kind under proper observing conditions. Over 600 people have applied in those 24 years. 75 people or groups of people have actually been tested. These have been water dowsers, astrologers, ESP artists, people who can read the contents of sealed envelopes, predict the future, whatnot, all kinds of people who I genuinely believe really think they have the powers, but have never actually properly been tested. Now, these people are innocents who are deceiving themselves. Oh, does it only happen with the psychics? No, it happens in science all the time. I've just come back from, I can't tell you where because I haven't published it yet, a certain part of the United States where they have a thing going where they think it's a brand new approach to treating people with certain disabilities, and they say that it works beautifully, and they're going to try to get it established as a standard therapy approved by the U.S. government. Not if I can help it, friends, because I think it's a total farce from end to end. And I will shortly be doing a paper on that, and I think we'll get a good deal of publicity. You've seen it on television, and it's all been accepted. It seems to be a genuine therapy, but believe me, my experience of it is that they're simply making mistakes. Can scientists make mistakes? Ooh, you betcha. They can make big blunders, and they do it, in most cases, in all honesty. Look at the cold fusion debacle. It's still raging. Some people are still supporting belief in it. There's a man in Mississippi who says he has a perpetual motion machine. I call it perpetual emotion, but he calls it perpetual motion. Well, he doesn't call it perpetual motion, he calls it free energy. You get the machine going, it generates electricity, and then you can take that electricity and feed it around to the machine, and that keeps it going. Well, he's never tried doing that exactly. I ask him why, and I can't seem to get a satisfactory answer, but that would be perpetual motion. He says it's just free energy. I went down there to investigate that for Omni and for Time magazines and came back with my report. It was the same as all the perpetual motion machines that have been perfected all over the years. It's very much like taking a generator, turning the generator to generate electricity, and then take that and run it into the generator to run the generator to run the electricity. It's around in a circle. There's an interesting thing that comes in between somewhere along the line. It's called friction. And they can't seem to get over that. If it weren't for that darn friction, we'd have perpetual motion. Well, perpetual motion machines, homeopathic medicine, N-rays, N-rays. Got to spend a minute on N-rays. Just to show you how scientists really can go a little crazy sometimes because they have a favorite notion that they would like to pursue. This has got everything in it. Chauvinism, national pride, hatred between nations. It involves France and Germany. You see, back in 1903, there aren't many of you who were around at that time. I was almost there. 1903, great letter a year in science, a red letter day, so to speak, arrived when a man named Röntgen in Germany announced his discovery of what we now call X-rays. He said these wonderful X-rays would penetrate flesh and such, but leave shadows of bones, penetrate paper and wood and various other substances, but metals would keep them back. They were opaque to these X-rays. They hadn't heard of anything like this. But scientists all over the world were soon replicating the experiments and got exactly the same results. We now know that X-rays do work and we use them all the time. Okay, wonderful discovery. That was a German discovery, remember. The French didn't have a ray, and they were very annoyed about this. French Academy of Sciences got very annoyed and said, we haven't got a French ray, the Germans have got a ray, we need a ray that is specifically French. Oh, the French are like that, believe me. I'm half French, so I know. They needed a ray, so they went to their leading scientist, a physicist named René Blondeau. And René Blondeau, a very respected man in science who had won all kinds of awards for his discoveries. Simple things today, but in those days, very complicated and very sophisticated. He came up with the discovery of N-rays. N-rays were named after the town of Nancy, where he was professor of physics at the university. And the town of Nancy became famous overnight in scientific circles. After he announced his experiments, 30 papers by actual count within the next year and a half poured in from scientists all over the world who were replicating the experiments, and also experiencing N-rays and adding a little bit more to the spectrum where the lines were in the spectrum of these N-rays. Now, I won't go through the complicated story of how they were viewed. They couldn't be seen by ordinary means. They were invisible to the eye, but they could be detected with a luminous thread in a dark room. And they had to put an aluminum prism in a thing that looked like a spectroscope. Not a glass prism, an aluminum prism, because that's what refracted the N-rays. Well, Nature magazine got a little suspicious about this. That's the English science journal. And the interesting thing was that no papers came from England, and none of them came from Germany. And the French were happy about that, because they were saying that in order to see the N-rays, you have to be particularly sensitive. And they said that the French, were much more sensitive to these things than the Germans could ever be, mostly because of diet. Literally, that's what they said. They said the Germans eat a lot of sauerkraut and pork and beer instead of fine French cuisine and fine French wines. Because of that, they haven't got the sensitivity to be able to see the N-rays in the darkened room when they hit the luminous thread. Well, the experiments involved going into a dark room and staying there for 2 to 4 hours in the dark until your eyes became accustomed to the dark. And you cannot tell me that French scientists, particularly those with a budget, would go into a room like that and sit around for 2 to 4 hours and not have a nice bottle of Chardonnay or something there. And some of the lines in the spectrum, I believe, from time to time were doubled. That may be a reason for it. Well, when you look into the situation, you find that René Blondeau was the best at seeing the N-rays and seeing the lines. And when Nature sent an investigator over there, a man named Wood from America, prize winner in physics, he did something tricky that I have to admire because I'm a trickster myself. Unknown to the French scientists, he secretly opened the top of this machine and removed the aluminum prism from a little clip and put it in his pocket. Now the machine wouldn't work without the aluminum prism. That's like trying to get into a race car and win the Indy 500 with no engine in the car. He removed the prism, and everybody went on sipping the wine, sitting in the dark, and saying French witticisms back and forth, no doubt. And Blondeau sat down himself and read off all the lines one after the other, and they dutifully wrote them down, and they agreed with what he had seen the last time he did this. And Wood was convinced at this point something is wrong. They're just imagining they'd see these things. But honestly imagining. And I believe to this day, and most scientists do, have studied the situation, they agree with me, and I'm a non-scientist certainly, but I agree along with them that he was being quite honest. He really thought he saw this little luminous thread getting slightly brighter when it reached a certain point on the dial. Well, then Wood took the prism from his pocket and opened up the top of the machine and quickly put it back in again, but a fellow sitting across the room, one of Blondeau's assistants, saw that move and made a mistake. He thought that at that point, Wood was removing the prism instead of putting it back. He went over to the machine and sat down and said, watch, I can do it too. Twist, twist, twist. Zut alors, sacre bleu. All those things the French do when they get excited. I don't see any lines here. Could it be? Opened up the top of the machine, to his horror, found that the prism was there, expecting that he was going to be able to say, aha, somebody has removed the prism. The whole thing was very embarrassing. And to this day, the Larousse, the French encyclopedia, is the only encyclopedia in the world which, when you try to look up N-rays and René Blondeau, doesn't mention anything about them at all. Every other encyclopedia, including the Britannica and the Americana, does. Because it's an important chapter in science history showing that scientists can fool themselves too. And what about those 30 papers that came in from all over the world? They were suddenly withdrawn. Everybody politely decided to forget about it. That's what happens in science. They don't take them out the back and shoot them, thank goodness. Although in some cases, it wouldn't be a terribly bad idea. Now, some of you may be getting the idea that only highly sophisticated people like scientists who are sort of living in that ivory tower, maybe they're the only people that get fooled. Not so. Maybe it's only unsophisticated people who are really ignorant that get fooled. No, not so. I think you were all taken in by the little thing with the microphone, but that's very simple. I'm going to show you a miracle. Ready for a miracle? Ta-da! I have here, he said, opening an envelope. This is a set of what they call the ESP cards. These were developed by a psychologist in Switzerland years ago called Zener. And they consist of 5 different symbols: a star, plus sign, wavy lines, circle, and a square. 5 simple, different geometrical shapes that should be pretty well enough different from one another that you wouldn't confuse one for the other. Now, I'm going to ask somebody to participate in this experiment. Young lady, would you participate? You can sit right where you are. You don't have to move. Okay? Can you catch them? Catch them. Good. There's more to do than that. But, all right. What I'd like you to do, if you please, is just keep the cards facing. Well, look at them. Make sure that they're exactly what I represent them to be. Then I'm going to ask you, if you'll be so kind, to shuffle them up face down. Keep them face down in your lap and mix them up like this, sort of do this kind of a thing with, back and forth. So you mix them up so you won't know which one is which, okay? And here, the gentleman beside me, would you catch these? Did you bring a note? You're late. I don't show up on film, that's another problem. Experiment we're going to do. I'm going to ask, after I turn my back, and I will turn my back on you, which is almost as interesting as my front, I'm going to ask you, as soon as I turn my back, to continue shuffling those cards up face down so you won't know which ones are which, so no one will know which one is which, okay? Then, sir, I want you to choose any one of those envelopes. I gave you a whole bunch of them because that's what I came with. Just take one at random and take one of the pieces of black paper. There's a folded piece of black paper there, several of them. You'll choose an envelope and one piece of black paper. Put the rest down on the ground after you've done it. And this is after my back is turned. I want you, ma'am, to take any 2 of those cards at random. And again, without looking at them. After I have turned my back, of course, you'll do this. Take 2 of the cards face down and make sure you don't know what they are and then nobody else knows what they are. And then this is very hard to do. You have to put them way down and turn them face to face so they're if you look at them, you only see backs, okay? And take the other 3 and you'll put them, say, under your purse or in your purse if you want, without looking at them. Because if you look at them, you'll know which ones you've got in your hand, right? Then you'll take those 2 that are face to face, take one of the folded pieces of black paper, put them inside the folded piece of black paper, and then seal it in any one of the envelopes. No, you don't fold it. See, the paper, each piece of black paper is like a little book, patch, right? Very good. The instructions are right at the back. Yeah. Now, those 2 cards, you won't know what they are. You place them inside the black paper, you put them inside any one of the envelopes, and then seal the envelope up. And after you've sealed the envelope and you've got the other 3 cards out of sight, so if I turn around, I can't see them, then I will turn around, okay? So you go ahead and do that now. Don't take advice from anyone. I never do. Now I'm turned away so that I can't see because it's just possible that the cards may be marked subtly on the back, and with my super telescopic vision I might be able to see what the cards are. I assure you they aren't, but you are now apparently, I would guess, choosing 2 cards, placing them face to face so that you don't know what they are. No one, including myself, will know what they are. Placing the other 3 someplace out of sight, again without looking at them. Putting the 2 cards into a piece of black paper, and then sticking inside one of the envelopes and sealing that envelope. Tell me when you've got that. Has it done? Yep. Oh, you're all done. That was very good. Now, the other cards are out of sight. Okay, throw me the envelope and seal up. Very good. Now, This is the envelope that we're using. I've got these silly books up here. And I'll tell you what, I can mark right on the envelope because I've got extra envelopes. Black marker. The chances of my guessing any one of those cards is 1 in 5, 20%, right? That's not terribly exciting. My chance of guessing 2 of them is much less. And my chance of doing what I'm about to do is even much less than that. What I'm going to do is I'm not only going to tell you what cards you sealed inside these envelopes, even though you don't know, but I'm also going to tell you on which side of the envelope they are. Now this is almost impossible to do because I'm going to call this, by the way, this is the back of the envelope. You folks can see that. This is the front of the envelope. Okay? That's sort of a code we have that we worked up. Science always likes to do things like that. Make it more complicated, it seems scientific. See? So I'm going to write with the magic marker right on the envelope which cards are in which side. This is the face, and let me see, I will say on this one, what does it look like to you on that one? Any ideas? Don't tell me. You're not supposed to help me on this. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to write on here what I think it is. I think this one is, shh, don't laugh, this is science again, remember? That's supposed to be a star. Not bad for an amateur. And on this side, I'm going to make a guess that it might be, I don't have to do that, but the magician Junior likes it. It makes it look much more professional, you see. I'm going to guess that this one is probably a circle. Now, if I were to look at the other 3, we would know whether I'm right, but we wouldn't know whether I was right on which side. So I'm going to open it up very carefully in front of you here. Remove the piece of, come on, you fool, piece of black paper. Now remember I said it would be the star on this side and the circle on the other. If I'm wrong, I have to shoot myself. And here we have, indeed, come open. Come on, you fool. By golly, we have them exactly as I called them. The star on one side and the circle on the other. That's a trick that I happen to develop on my very own. That's my own invention. Thank you very much, sir. It happens to be my very own invention. I do it sort of because I know there are always amateur magicians in the audience someplace. Eat your hearts. No, it's not on sale. They don't sell it through the catalogs, and other people don't do this particular demonstration simply because it is my particular invention. But I showed it to you for a very simple reason. I'm not out here to say, see, I'm so smart I can do something you can't figure out. That's not the point. The point is, folks, that the psychics don't do things that are half as impressive as that. And yet, people tend to believe them. They not only tend to believe them, they tend to give them huge amounts of money. If they have some sort of a horoscope on the wall behind them, or they have a turban or an earring, they say, gee, they must know what they're doing. They can cast horoscopes, therefore they can tell me my future. Let's handle astrology just for a second. We'll see whether they can do things that are really remarkable. Sure, you can get a horoscope cast for you, look at it and say, that's me, right on. That really is, that's astonishing. How could that person ever have known all those things about me? Well, I'll give you one quotation of a generalized reading, which was given out on the Merv Griffin show years ago when that was on TV by Omar, who was sort of, not a tent maker, no, he was an astrologer, and a very famous one, a millionaire. He had a column that ran for 30 years in the newspapers. I noticed that your local newspaper has an astrology column in it, and you have a McDonald's, so civilization is obviously here in town, no question. Omar stood up in the audience and he said about this particular lady after she said the birth date and she gave him a number at random. He said, based upon the number that you have chosen and the horoscope, I would say that you are a person who, if you're not in public service at this time, you certainly should be, you're the kind of person who, once being cheated, finds it hard to forget. But in general, you tend to trust your fellow persons. Hey, is there anybody here that disagrees with either one of these statements that I just made? Look at the first one. If you're not in public service, you certainly should be. That covers everyone, alive or dead. Everyone. An infant, a grown person. If you're not, and the person turned out to be a nurse, and everybody went, wow, how did he know? That person had been an axe murderer. Shouldn't be in public service, shouldn't be an axe murderer. The statement has to be correct. Later on, went on, and said, you're very close to your mother. Now, is this a question or a statement? The way he said it. You're very close to your mother. The person said, well, no, actually, we live apart. I didn't mean physically. I meant Emotionally, you're very close to your mother. Well, yes, you have been closer in the past, and she's really very close to you, but you don't quite understand. You see, she feels closer to you than you do to her. Oh. You see how we're suddenly backing down and sliding around? We're doing one of these hot and cold things. No, the person isn't close to her mother. The mother lives in another city. Well, we made up for that. No, I meant emotionally, of course. Silly me. I should have said emotionally. And it goes on. That statement works with everyone. If your mother is dead, still, you've got psychic ties with your mother. Your mother really is here. I see her spirit right beside you now. Hello, Mom. How are you? They get away with this kind of thing. They constantly do it. That's what's called doing cold readings. And people always come to me after one of these talks and say, but this woman told me remarkable things about myself. No, usually they didn't tell them something. What they did is they asked them enough questions to get information out of them. Now, I have a reading that was done on a program in the UK, a six-program series called James Randi, Psychic Investigator. A series of weekly programs in which we allowed all the psychics and spoon benders and the whole thing to come in and be tested. They get my $10,000 prize. If they succeed, and if they don't, they get nothing. Well, I didn't have to give away the $10,000. A lady came in and did a reading, and she produced for us as well a tape recording that was given to us actually on behalf of a fellow sitting in the front row, a fellow who was totally satisfied with the 30-minute reading she gave for him. And I said to him, after listening to the tape and having made an accurate transcript of it, I said to the gentleman, did Maureen, that was her name, did Maureen ask you any questions during this? He said, oh, no, she told me things all the way through. How often was she right? Oh, she was right every time. Every time. See? Did she use any modifiers like, it might be, or I feel that, or I'm driven to say, or I should tell you that? No. She said things directly. Well, I really wish I had copies of it to hand to every one of them. Did she mention any names that didn't hit? No, every one of the names hit. She mentioned 31 names in 30 minutes. None of them hit except one. One of them hit, and that was the name of a brother of hers. But when you listen to the tape, Maureen identifies it as the name of a dog, not her brother. But her brother was dead by then. Aha, well, maybe the spirit inhabits the brother's body. See, the dog's body, but the brother's spirit inhabits the dog's body. And actually, it wasn't her dog either. It was the dog next door. And yet that man was perfectly satisfied to have paid 50 pounds, about $75, so $85 at that particular time at the rate of exchange, for that reading. He was perfectly satisfied, and he didn't remember a thing that had happened on that tape recording. It only took place about 10 days before. And he gave us the tape recording as evidence that this was a wonderful reader. Now, I've had other people make tape recordings of their readings that they've had done with fortune tellers and cold readers, as we call them. And you ask them about what's in it, they say, oh, it's marvelous. She gave me the name of my sister, Martha. Really? Listen to the tape recording. And the psychic says, I'm getting M. Who is M? It must be someone very close to you. Male or female? She says, female. Right. Oh, yes, I knew it was female. But she didn't know it was female. She said, male or female? Well, one answers female. She says, oh, yes, I knew that. She goes, what is the name? Is it Mary? No, it's Martha. Ah, Martha, of course, was longer than Mary. I could not quite understand what it was. Who is she? She's my sister. I see. Afterwards, the woman said, how could she possibly have identified my sister's name as Martha? She didn't. She did a lot of guessing, started out with M, and she was given Martha and the fact that it was her sister. But she didn't remember it that way. In the same way that the TV lady said, looking at the videotape, I'm sorry, that's not the way it happened. Cognitive dissonance is a very powerful force, and we can all suffer from it. It happens all the time. I've had descriptions how certain psychics can bend spoons merely by looking. They look at them with the spoon, rolls right out, or shatters it in 2 pieces. Really? Well, I've offered my $10,000 prize if anyone can do that. Can anyone do it? Maybe. But hey, I've been around for a long time, 63 years. I've been looking for it. Not all of that time, but certainly for about 40 years of it. Anyway, I've been looking actively for it. Really willing to be shown. I'll give the $10,000 if anyone can do it. Now, I asked, is it Katie? Where are you, Katie? Hello? Did you leave? You're someplace out there? She got me a couple of spoons. These came, you know, Tony, it wasn't cafeteria, it's for a coffee room they have or something? I see. Okay. They are, I guess, stainless Taiwan. We don't need anything, do we? Ah, this is better. Stainless Korea. Well, let's, how about you? Would you like to help me on this? Can you, why don't you run up the stairs? Come on over on the Canadian side here. Yes, that's it. Have you ever seen me before? How do you know it's me? Not too sure, huh? Why, what's your name? It is Jennifer. You're absolutely right. Would you do me a favor? This is a, can you read what it says on there? It says stainless steel Korea, is that what it says? It does indeed. I'm going to ask you to hold this spoon, if you will, between your fingers like that, okay? So everyone can see it. Just hold it like that for me. Very good. Hold it up high. Very good. You ever done this before? It's marvelous. You're really very professional. Watch what I'm going to do now. Jennifer, you're going to see something very strange happen. I'm just going to stroke it gently with my fingers, not putting too much pressure on it, ready? And you're going to see a remarkable thing happen to this spoon. Ooh, I can feel it happening now. Ooh, ooh. You're getting the sensations? Powers, flying saucer. Watch, you're going to feel the vibrations all through your body. Look at this, look. It seems to be getting limp, look. Look at that. Looks flexible, isn't it? Look, isn't that strange? Look, just one finger. Touch. Let go of it for a second, Jennifer. I'm going to, look, you watch it carefully. I'm just going to shake it with my hand like this. Watch, you'll see something very remarkable. Look, it seems to be getting limp. Look at that, all floppy. It seems to be bending over again. Jennifer did very well, didn't she? Let's give her a round of applause. That's astonishing. The amazing Jennifer. Okay. Now again, I show you these little tricks in order to show you that it is not the stupid, unsophisticated peasants out there. It's not those folks who get deceived. Oh, they get deceived too. It's folks like you. You can be deceived by these simple things. They are all tricks. Yes, it's very true. But it doesn't mean that they won't deceive you. Because scientists deal with crystals of copper sulfate, photons, protons, whatever. Those things don't go out of their way to deceive them. Einstein once said something to the effect that nature is exceedingly complex, but never malicious. What he really means by that is that nature doesn't go out of its way to fool you. These things will do the same thing every time, given the same circumstances. But when human beings come into it, particularly tricky folks like me, with flexible hands. That's amazing. You didn't really think it was working. Yeah, you really think it did that way. When folks like myself enter the picture, you suddenly get the idea, oh, nature has changed its path, especially for this gentleman. No, I'm a trickster. That's my business. My business is to deceive you. But now, I'm going to show you a trick, and then I'm going to allow you to catch me. Wow. I would like to borrow a gentleman's wristwatch, one with hands on it, not one of those digital terrible things. You have a digital terrible thing, don't you? I won't destroy the watch, I promise you. Do you loan me it's going to loan me his watch right here. Very good. Thank you very much, sir. Now, it's gold. Look at this. Ooh, sparkly. Yes, it says here, Cracker Jack. I never saw that name. I see. Okay. Stand up right there down by the end of the stage, if you will, please. Now, I want you to check the time. It says 1 minute past 12. Am I correct? And my watch says 1 minute past 12. He's looking at his watch. He just gave it to me. Yeah, you're okay. Sure. Yeah. I like it. You want to come along to all my shows? Now, watch this carefully. I'm going to ask you to just open up your hand like that. Okay. Now, I'm going to put the watch face down in your hand like that. Put the finger of your other hand in the back. There, with your glasses. Very good. Okay, hold your hand up. Now, I'm going to cast a spell on your watch. You back again? I think I hurt myself. My age is going to hurt. I don't have to do this, but the magician's unit really likes it if you put on a little. Now, I'm going to take it, if I may, just to peek at it. Not yet. You're not working very hard, so put the finger back on it. Take a peek at it again, please. And now would you tell the audience what time it says, please? How time flies when you're having fun. Really. Now I'm going to do it for you all over again. This time I'm going to allow you to catch me, because there are two moments of truth here, which were done when you weren't looking for them. You didn't know what was about to happen. And I'm now going to signal. I'll give you a subtle, audible signal that you have to listen for it carefully, okay? When I do the moment of truth, I'll go, ha! Like that, you see? So you'll catch it if you're listening carefully. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put your glasses down this time. Now I'm going to do it all over again. Sir, I'll do it in slow motion so that you won't miss it, okay? I would like to walk. That'll take forever. I take the watch from the gentleman, and the first step, pay attention now, this is the lesson, I allow it to flap a great deal when I'm holding it between my fingers, and I take it like this, holding a tippy finger like this, so to speak, for a very good reason. It sells the idea to you that I'm not touching the body of the watch, you see, that I'm handling it very carefully. I'm not going to fiddle with the watch, right? I do a great deal of this sort of thing, and I even get very chummy with the man. When the man looks at his wristwatch, I lean down, I'm holding it like this, it's flopping backward, and I do this kind of a thing. That's all to lull you into a sense of, I'm not really doing anything yet, so don't watch me too carefully. Then at one point, I take the watch like this, and I say to the gentleman, I say, step over here, would you? And I do that now. Ha! Here's one of the moments of truth. As I take the watch like this, I bring this finger up and stick the fingernail underneath the winding stem here, and out it comes. But you're not looking for that, and you don't expect it. And at the same time, I pull back the sleeve on my watch like that, and I say, it says 1 minute past 12, this is 1 minute past 12. You're not looking for the winding stem, you're too busy looking at the time, right? And then I say, watch this, ha! As I bring it up like that, I do this with it, and press it back in again, take it like this, allowing it to flop back and forth, say, open your hand for me, but I'm tilting it away so that he can't see the time on it, in case he looks. Open up your hand, that's very good. Put the finger of the other hand on the back of it, that's to keep him from turning it over and looking at it. And I go, the whole thing like that. Then I say, let me take a look at it. And now I use the greatest weapon that the magician or the psychic has. I say, not yet. That's called lying. It's a bare-faced lie. I look at it, not yet. But what happens with you? You reset in your mind. You go back to zero and say, oh, nothing's happened yet. Now, if I really watch it carefully, if you're going to do anything, I'll catch it. But it's already been done long ago. And now when I put it back in your hand, put your finger on it, all I need is the music. The whole thing. And I now take it, again flopping it like that and carefully picking it up like that. Say, oh, look what time it is now. And the time is considerably changed. Thank you very much. You can take your seat, sir. Give him a round of applause. I allowed you to catch me at that particular trick. I showed you how it was done, because now you should know that you don't know what to look for, and you never will. You need training for literally decades in order to learn when to catch the magician and what he's doing. That's why people like Copperfield are so exceedingly successful. Their personality, their driving force, their authority on that screen or on that stage, and if you ever get a chance to see Mr. Copperfield, please, I'm not his agent, don't pass up the opportunity to see it. I broke it, by the way. Don't pass up the opportunity to see Mr. Copperfield, because in seeing him, you will learn even more strongly than you have today, and the simple demonstration that I've done for you, that you too can be deceived. That's the primary lesson. Now, I have to close the lecture shortly after 12. Don't trust his watch. It's shortly after 12. As you know, at 1:30, I believe, is it, Tony? At 1:30. 1 o'clock, I'm sorry. At 1 o'clock, I won't be there till 1:30. At 1 o'clock, if you wish to come back, you will be able to ask questions then. I regret we don't have time to do it now. Let's close with this, if I may. And this is what I close all of my talks with and all of my magic shows. And it goes like this. No, Virginia. No, I'm sorry. There is no real magic. Oh, wait a minute, Virginia. I'll tell you, maybe there actually is. You see, I have morning glories on my property in Plantation, Florida. Morning glories are remarkable things. This little vine that grows up outside my office window. I get up, sometimes 6:30, 7 o'clock, make a cup of coffee, go sit down on the computer to get some work done before the phone starts going at 9 o'clock. Look out the window. All those little morning glories are closed up tight like that. All curled up in hand like that. Tight as if saying, I'm really cold tonight. I don't want to open up until I see that sun. Later on in the day, they'll be open like this. I never catch them doing it. Now maybe that's magic. Maybe they just wait till he's looking away and they'll say, hey, look away, look away. Maybe they do it very slowly like this. And when I look at them, they stop and they do it a little bit more like that. I don't know. But every time, every morning, I miss it. And I look around and they're over. And I forgot to watch them very carefully. How does it work? I don't know. That's my little bit of magic. There are little bits of magic in my life, little bits of fantasy. Oh, I know that if I went to a botanist who specialized in it, probably wrote a paper on it and got a PhD for it, he probably wrote a paper, he or she, someplace along the line in some country of the world, on how morning glories know enough to open up in the morning and close up at night, how they do it. Maybe this, I don't want to know. Because I want a little bit of fantasy in my life. But I want you to remember one thing. As long as you recognize it's fantasy, and you're having fun, you're watching the Star Wars, or you're watching David Copperfield, and you enjoy the fantasy, hey, that's where all the poetry and great literature comes from fantasy. As long as you know it's fantasy. If you don't know that it's fantasy, you run the danger of becoming emotionally unstable and wasting the rest of your life chasing a will-o-the-wisp, something that doesn't really happen, it isn't really there. Now, you have a choice. We've gone to the moon. Oh, yeah, well, that I didn't. Nobody here, I presume, went to the moon. I certainly didn't. But our species did. A fellow named Neil Armstrong and some of the other guys, they went up around the moon, jumped out in a thing that looked like a telephone booth on legs, landed on the moon. They got out of it, folks, and they walked around in their funny suits, the jeans, and they picked up pieces of the moon, rocks that they put in their pockets and brought back here to Earth. Now I can go to museums all over the world, as I have done. Every place in the world, every major city in the world, there's a little piece of moon rock. At least a bit of it, there's an arrow pointing saying piece of the moon. Hey, 250,000 miles out into space, where there's no air, there's no nothing. They went out there, got out in funny suits, picked up a piece and brought it back so that I could see it in some museum in Brussels. That's rather remarkable. Hey, aren't we remarkable folks to be able to do something like that? Take a look around you. Do we really need all of the people with the funny turbans and the horoscopes on the wall behind in order to have a wonderful, exciting life? I certainly don't need it, and I hope that you don't either. But you're given a choice. You see, those people tell you you're not the dignified, responsible, capable person, real human being, who can run your own life. I can run your life, and if you cross my palm with silver, give me a little money for the bank account to pay the rent and such, I'll help you run your life. You don't need that, folks. You really don't need it. You can do it on your own. And I urge you to do that. Now, the choice is up to you. They want you to go back into the caves that your ancestors came from and sit in the mud. I've tried it. It's very cold and damp. Stay all night in front of a fire, throw rocks and stones and things that go bump in the night outside. You can do that if you want. And they'll tell your fortune. And you'll believe in all this nonsense. And they'll get fat and rich at your expense. That's one thing you can do. In other words, go backwards. But hey, we've been to the moon and we're going to the planets. No question of it. Maybe not during our lifetimes, but we will go to the planets. And eventually, ladies and gentlemen, dare I say it, but I'm sure it's true, mankind will go to the stars. Because they're there. Someday, we'll go to the stars. I made up my mind a long time ago whether I want to go back into the caves or go to the stars. Folks, I decided to go to the stars. That's why I'm here today, to invite you to join me.
We would like to ask all of you to cooperate. Thank you, Mr. Randi. He has to go to lunch. You need to go to lunch. If you'll just let him get away, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock. Thank you.